Thanks.
Cool.
All right. Hello. Thanks again for doing this. Um,
Absolutely.
would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, so my name is AP Hatton. I have been making dance music and for a little under 10 years, and I've been DJing it for a little under 8. And I've been a fan of the music for much longer. I recently graduated from RIT this past December. And while I was at RIT, I wound up as the president of the EDM club there. So I was really heavily involved in sort of the music scene and specifically the electronic music scene in Rochester. And now that I'm in Philly, I continue to go to shows and will hopefully be DJing in Philly soon.
Exciting.
Yeah.
So, what first drew you to EDM?
So I guess it's a funny story is I heard Lady Gaga records on the radio and went, oh wow, the beats, the instruments behind her are great. Can I just take her out of the song and just listen to the beat? And that spiraled into getting introduced into the music by people I knew in fifth grade, which kind of began into me getting obsessed with the music and it being all I listened to, which then turned into me making it. And so it's been kind of a very narrow-minded track from there.
Yeah. Would you say the internet or more traditional word of mouth was more influential in you finding EDM?
I don't think it's an either or. I think it's sort of I grew up like when I first was starting to be aware of the existence of electronic music. It was before I had access to the internet. But as immediately like really starting to listen to the music regularly and me having access to the internet kind of came at almost the exact same time, and the internet really enabled me to fuel my love of something that really very few people around me could really connect with me on and really enjoyed at the time.
That's cool. So, how did you become involved properly with the EDM scene, and what do you do now?
So I guess I started from making music and putting it up on the internet. I'm going to be putting more music up on the internet soon. Stay tuned. A little quick plug. Um, but it turned from that into playing some like house parties and whatnot at friends' houses to going to shows and I like really like meeting people at these shows and sort of that community driven aspect of it led me to wanting to get involved at on a more like it or administrative and organizational level. And so I asked the right people at RIT and one thing led to another and I had important decisions to make. Um,
Yeah. So, are you pursuing it full time at the moment?
No, I'm not. Sadly not. I work in finance and accounting, doing tax processing and financial analysis, but I basically spend all of my weekends either making music, attending shows, and much of that is what I'm going to be doing as soon as this interview is over. So yeah, it sort of dominates the sphere of my life that is not paying rent and eating. Um,
Nice. So, what would you say it's like being part of the EDM scene today?
sorry, being
Being part of the scene today.
I think it's the best community on the planet. I think there's very few communities where you can just kind of show up however you are, whatever you look like, whatever sexual orientation you have, and you're just cool and they're happy for you to be there. And the fact that despite the popularity of the music and sort of the mainstream appeal that it now has, where it used to not, we've sort of maintained that. And you can always go far enough, and there is a guy in a warehouse playing to like 10 people. And very like that sort of uniqueness and sort of, and like the fact that an electronic song is an electronic and frequently lyrics aren't always a core part of the song, which makes it very transferable to non-English speakers, right? It allows me to connect with someone from India, from Ghana, or from Korea. Even though we don't speak the same language, we can still appreciate the same music in a way that it's much harder to translate like rap music or country music to non-Americans. And it's that sort of internationality combined with the still relative obscurity that much the scene lives in makes it a really special place.
Neat. So would you say it's accurate then rather than shifting from the underground to more commercial venues, it's sort of more of a diversification instead?
I think it's just one of those things where the music that exists for those commercial spaces kind of exists within those commercial spaces, and sort of the music that remains at the underground level has a lot of barriers in place and sort of the way it's written that really prevent it from reaching that space
I see.
very intentionally so. And
So
so like
you're,
I
sorry,
think
go ahead.
yeah, no, I think dance music has produced a lot of like really mainstream superstars now, but though the diversity within dance music is just so great that it's honestly disingenuous to label it as all the exact same and all the exact same community for that matter.
Yeah, so you're saying like as it kind of grew and split off, some versions became more mainstream and more
Yeah,
heavily commercialized, but like the underground's still there if you're looking for it.
it is. Yeah, no, I think dance music has just I think the audience of it has increased, and I don't think that audience has really replaced the underground scene. It's just kind of added to it. Um, as the market share of EDM in the music sphere only continues to grow, um, I don't think the underground is going to be replaced. I just think that the divide between those artists and someone like David Guetta is just going to get wider, wider and wider. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So if you were going to describe going to the club, going to the show for
yeah,
somebody who just like had never been or hadn't been in years,
yeah.
how would you describe it? What's like the atmosphere and the people like?
Be awake, be ready to dance, be ready to be up past your bedtime. That's kind of where I would start with it. And be willing to accept new things and new music and things you might not have heard of. And really, if something new and different excites you on a given day, I think dance music is a really good place for those people. And um, if you're someone who's very either bored or you're very just sort of dissatisfied with how you've been spending your weekends, I think sort of a high energy kind of late night activity that dance music frequently fits.
Your mic cut out towards the very end of your sentence there. I'm sorry.
Um, of high energy late night activity that dance shows can frequently become might be a fun time for you.
So how would you describe the people at the rave? How would you describe the crowd?
I don't know if that's a fair question because the diversity of those people is insane. I think how I would
Mhm.
describe it as there's a lot of different people. Basically anyone from all walks of life, probably dressed in a lot less clothing than they normally wear to whatever professional job they work. Um, but people from all different races, all different professional backgrounds, all different genders, everyone is there. Um, I'd have a lot of smiling people too, a lot of very, very happy people, and a lot of very friendly people. So I think happy, friendly, and excited, I think, are the qualities I would use.
Totally. So how do you find out about events and share information about music?
The internet. The internet's the best thing that's happened to dance music, and I don't think there's a singular genre of music that has taken advantage of the internet quite like dance music has. And there's lots of websites, there's lots of resources that constantly are updating with new shows. Um, and there's lots of like local guys on Instagram that you can go follow. I know Rochester is a really, really poor example of this, but where I am in Philly, there's so many different collectives throwing their own shows and really organizing just on a very grassroots ground floor level. And you just might get recommended them through the Instagram algorithm. You just stay in the loop is what I would say on the internet, and it's very easy.
Totally. How would you say EDM has uniquely taken advantage of the internet?
I think the fact that we have so many producers, like the countries of the people I actively listen to is insane. I listen to British guys, there's Italian guys, there's might be an Indian producer, there's plenty of Americans, like because there isn't this sort of language component that can so heavily dictate the way we consume music, there isn't necessarily a barrier between me listening to music from someone from thousands of miles away from where I am. But that sort of discovery would be a lot more difficult without the internet. You used to have to go to the record store and see their new releases, their new holdings, what they had. And that could be a very limited selection biased on what the store owner's curation is. And the internet allows you to skip that in a really, really awesome way.
That's cool. So moving on to venues, what kind of venues do you typically see in your experience? And do you always have to pay to go to shows or clubs?
So that's changed a lot. I'm trying to think of in a school interview what's appropriate.
Sorry.
Because that like I'm getting to the point. This is, I guess, an aside from the interview. You guys in the EDM club don't know what you're missing. Just genuinely do. There is so much that you guys miss because you're in Rochester and it's Rochester and yada
Philly
yada
is
yada.
busy, yeah.
But like venues can range from stadium tours from the Swedish House Mafia to dedicated venues to like local dive bars to someone's garage. And payment more and more as the scene is growing is becoming expected, but
Hmm.
the amount you're paying to see a world-class DJ is like a joke compared to if you want to see like an Olivia Rodrigo, Taylor Swift, like, and no offense, like these sorts of artists. Like I paid for context in Philly, I paid $27 after taxes and fees to see an Ibiza resident DJ play a show, then would go to the after party where I paid another $20 to get into the after, and then I got to see him with the same distance you and I are talking. Like I shook
Crazy.
his hand, like I was able to get that close, and you just can't say that in any other sort of music.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah,
incredible how how much it's grown and
yeah.
how close it still is.
But I really, for the most part, I think your typical nightclub, your typical bar, like darker bar is kind of where most of the like dirty work of the scene is taking place.
So do you feel like it's kind of heading towards more commercialization, or do you feel like it's just kind of stratifying, like the bigger DJs are getting bigger and the smaller clubs are staying small?
I think it's stratifying. I think that's just the nature of the music industry right now is that our tastes are very neat are becoming more niche and they're becoming more algorithm driven and sort of DJs that sort of fit into these lanes will attract sort of the audiences and sort of the shows. And I think what matters a lot too is where these guys are getting played outside of necessarily Spotify, right? Like the people I'm seeing at a garage at 4 in the morning in Philly are not getting their music at the H&M, or
Totally.
their music isn't on the radio. Um, and so I think because dance music just as a body of music is so much bigger than really any other genre of music due to the number of different sounds you can make on a computer,
Mhm.
aka endless. Like I think we're gonna get to a point where we don't start referring to house music and dubstep as dance music, but as just their own things. And we're gonna be evaluating those scenes in terms of are they stratifying or not.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll be very interesting to see how algorithms affect things even more
Because the
because
thing is, it's just not weird for a 10-year-old to hear EDM now. And
yeah.
there's no like, because they've grown up with the technology and the internet and whatnot. There isn't that sort of inherent inversion to, oh, this isn't a human. And that's going to do an obscene amount for dance music. Like people, I don't think people understand the growth that the industry is about to see in the next 30 years. I just don't.
And there's also that accessibility component of
Yeah,
whereas like, we had a big boom with like the dubstep era and the internet, but I think we're going to see another boom where like people aren't even searching for things, they're getting served to them by the algorithm.
I can
That's
make you a
what's going
Billboard
on.
record on this laptop that I'm talking to you on. Like that's the sort of accessibility that dance music has, that like the rest of the, the music landscape just doesn't, or most of the music landscape doesn't.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the scene is more commercialized or more commodified right now at all? Why or why not?
I mean, my answer to this is not a dance music specific. I think crowds have changed a lot since the pandemic, and I don't think that's due to EDM. I just think it's due to the inherent value
Mm.
of going to shows is a lot higher than it used to be from a social perspective, and I think that larger artists that sort of have this "I saw him" kind of value are seeing people becoming a lot more aggressive in crowds, pushing to the front, using their
Mm.
phones all the time. And it's not so much a dance music driven trend, but like DJing is a very cult like sort of art at the top because one guy on a stage to thousands of people all staring at him. And that sort of following drives a lot of social media engagement and potential real life concert engagement influenced by social media that I think makes is making the larger DJs more popular and increasing their commercialization and making crowds more complicated to be in.
I see what you mean. Do you feel
Yeah,
like, one of the big things of like the early house scene was that even though these DJs were small, they just had like a serious cult following. Do you still
yeah,
see that for like the lower kind of strata?
absolutely, absolutely. And I've connected through with a lot of people at shows because we'll listen to the guy who's playing who not everyone in the audience has even heard of, and suddenly that's a 5 minute conversation about, oh, what do you listen to? Who do you like? What do you make? And you get that guy's Instagram, and suddenly you were in the studio with that dude a week later. So there definitely is that sort of cult like following, but like really volume is what kind of makes it a problem. And it's why someone like Taylor Swift, you can't stand at a Taylor Swift concert
Mm.
because there's too many damn people in that arena who want to see her.
So do you think that EDM could get too big to fail? Do you think?
Absolutely. I think that's where we are headed next. But we really need the next sort of script. Like John Summit, I think his music's blown up. He's done great, but he isn't sort of the same sort of generational kind of moving talent that Avicii was or Skrillex was. And like I think dance music needs to be on the Billboard charts again, and it will eventually. But for right now, it's not. And that I think I could waste the rest of your night talking about social trends, why that is, because it's not really dance music related, but and we need to see EDM in the Billboard top 10 again for
Yeah.
that to happen.
So what do you think these big artists getting so big, that like type of commercialization has
Yeah.
added or taken away from or
think it's
changed throughout the scene?
I think it's added an insane amount to the scene. I think the fact that I can I the difference in when I would present like share my music with people at RIT in my freshman year in 2019 versus 2023 was night and day. People would say, "Oh, you turn that off. What is that?" You know. And 4 years later, I have fraternities and sororities asking me to play their events purely because I have this knowledge of music that's suddenly trendy and popular that would have otherwise, they wouldn't have batted an eye to. And the more people interested in the music, the more opportunities there are for artists to make money in the music, and the more sort of the movement grows. And it's real as an early adopter, it's really refreshing and validating to see that I was right about something.
Totally. So like you wouldn't be opposed if it went mainstream. You think that would just be
I already
beneficial?
think it is. I think it is. I just think it's we don't sort of have the cults that like Olivia Rodrigo can like recruit. We just don't have that yet. Um, and I don't like I couldn't give you an artist and be like, oh yeah, that dude's gonna get there and be that guy. But
In addition to the audience changing, do you think the kind of motivation are changing? Do you think it's more about the money these days at all?
Again, I think it's getting more stratified. I think there's plenty of artists that are there. I could rant to you about the really, really large dip in quality that a lot of professional dance artists are experiencing in their music. David Guetta is the prime example with this. If you listen to his song with One Republic this past week, and it is very obviously lazily written. But I think the underground artists are still trying just as hard. And the reasons why their music isn't seeing mainstream are gonna continue to keep that part section of the scene alive and well.
All right.
So I just think they're two very different audiences.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
you answering all my
Yeah.
questions. Are there any other thoughts you wanted to include in the interview?
Support RIT EDM Club. Go to EDM EDU on the Saturday.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and